Okay. Let's give it a minute to have people log in. And then we'll start. Okay. Hello, everyone. Come in. Take a seat. The speakers are ready. We're going to have quite an interesting discussion. Okay. I would say let's get started slowly but surely. So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Gala's webinar. My name is Isabella Massardo. I'm content strategist here at Gala. And today's webinar is actually a follow-up to a presentation/discussion that was started by Søren Eberhard, Global Site Manager at Microsoft, at the end of October, if I'm not mistaken. He presented his ideas of the best collaboration between LSPs and translation buyers. And after the event, Diego Cresceri, CEO of Creative Words, reached out and by popular demand, basically, we organized a follow-up discussion. And Søren and Diego will be joined by Jose Palomares, Director of Localization at Coupa Software. So just to remind you, at any time during the webinar, you can use the QA box to submit your questions. And at the end of the discussion, we'll do a Q&A. If you prefer to talk directly to Diego and his guests, just raise your hand and I'll open the microphone. The webinar will be recorded. I'll share the link in a follow-up email after the event. And the recording will also be published on the Gala website. So Diego, I'm gonna hand the microphone to you.
Thank you very much, Isa. Welcome, Søren, welcome, Jose, and everybody. Yeah, you said it right. After Søren's presentation, I felt the need to have a follow-up session. And I invited Jose and Søren to take part. Thank you for being here today. Let me start by talking not so much about the agenda. We don't have a real agenda. It's going to be a discussion. So I really invite you to ask questions during the conversation. We will first introduce ourselves a little bit, and I thought of using keywords based on Søren's presentation to stimulate discussion. So the discussion will be around some topics that I chose. Hopefully you will like them. And the first one would be quality, and then scope, price, processing and tools, relationship, and skills. So the idea again is not to have a panel format where I ask questions to my guests. It's more a discussion. I hope I can give you some answers as well. If you have any question for me, we will have a poll as well in order to understand, our audience, who you are basically, and then at the end we will have another couple of polls. And again, we will have a final Q&A session where you can ask us anything, even outside of the topics that I've thought of. Let me start then with maybe a small presentation from you guys, Jose and Søren. Just a few words about myself. I'm Diego Cresceri, Creative Words. We are basically a single language vendor based in Italy. Our customers are mostly MLVs at the moment, but we also work with direct customers. So Søren, I will start with you. Would you introduce yourself? And maybe if you want, you can also share your approach to localization. Do you outsource it? Do you go to multiple vendors? Do you go to one single vendor?
Yeah, so my name is Søren Eberhard. I'm working for Microsoft as a global site manager. And as you can imagine, Microsoft as a big corporation has a few teams. We've consolidated the space a little bit, but there's a few different vendor models, few different vendor relationships that we're having. Actually, in most cases, we are working with MLVs. I worked on a program, and that is a while ago, probably 15 years ago, where I had to work with tons of different single language vendors. But that was when we were actually just starting localizing into certain languages. So currently, in my current role as a global site manager, I am working with an MLV, and actually, I'm in a happy relationship, so to speak. So it's a great partnership.
Thanks. Jose, what about you?
So first of all, I'm muted. Sorry about that. So I'm Jose Palomares. I'm the director of localization at Coupa Software. That is enterprise software in the finance space. And it's not as big as Microsoft for sure. It's still like getting big. It's 3,000 people and counting at the moment. But I've been around for 3 years now, and we've basically started a whole journey for localization. So I've been at different stages where I could have like described the setup as very different. Right now, our setup looks like a hybrid model. We do have like some people that we work with on a direct basis, like we employ some freelancers to be kind of like what we call our language leads. In some cases, we hire those people internally as full-time employees. So again, more of a hybrid model. And then depending on the type of content, what we do at Coupa and in the localization, we're a center of excellence that localizes every aspect of the company. So everything that is like product and pre-sales content and post-sales sites and content, we do everything, and we use different vendors for each of those. So we actually have like 3 vendors that we use primarily, and they're like assigned to the different types of content. So with some people we work primarily on product. With some of the people we're going to be doing more like marketing and sales content. And with some of the people we focus on like training, technical documentation. So, and some of them are like MLVs. Some of them are like more boutique companies. So a little bit of everything. God knows what it is.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Now, let me try and do this because I want to understand the audience that we have. So I'm gonna launch a poll on Slido. All you need to do is go to slido.com and enter this code that you see here. Let me share this screen with the Slido. If I manage to do that, yeah, I should be able. So yeah, let me launch the first one. Basically, I would like to know who you are. Are you representative of an LSP, a buyer, so an end customer, or none of the above?
None of the above is kind of like you got lost and you joined this by mistake.
Yeah, more or less. Could be academia. I know that Gala is a wonderful program with academia, so this is why I have this option as well. Okay. I'm not sure I see the number of votes. Yeah,
yes, they're coming. Slowly they're coming in.
They're coming. So for now, okay. Seems LSPs are winning more and more.
Just to get a little bit like philosophical here. Aren't we all like linguistic services buyers?
We are. We are, absolutely. And if you have an organization with internal customers, you are also a linguistic service provider, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. So I think we will have many questions for you guys, rather than for myself. So I will wait a couple of more seconds. In the meanwhile, let me check the chat. Okay. Okay, so I think we can close it here. I think majority is LSPs. We don't have any buyer, it seems, or maybe they are too shy. Let me go back to the presentation now. So, good. You should be able to see my presentation again. And I would start with the first topic, which is quality. And so basically, what I would like is anybody in the audience to ask questions about quality. I'm sure you have many. I came prepared with some myself, of course, but my aim here would be more to hear from you, because as an LSP myself, I'm sure that you have many questions for your end customers about quality. Is there any of you willing to ask any question? Otherwise, I would go with the first one from my side.
And the harder the questions, the better. That's what we
yeah,
came
absolutely.
From, right? Don't be nice. Ask whatever is itching, whatever you think that we won't be able to answer. Let us surprise you.
Itching. In this very moment, my leg is itching too much. In any case, the first one, which is a broad one, how do you evaluate the quality from your vendors? And more specifically, how do you evaluate it at the beginning of your cooperation with your vendors? Who wants to go with that? It's for both of you, actually. Okay, Jose.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So we take a very fluid approach to what we call quality. So if we're talking about like linguistic quality, I think that we all use similar mechanisms, right? In our case, the scope of what we do is so big that we can't really QA everything that we do. So a lot of like the impressions that we get about the work that we do is through feedback. So sometimes we will get like customer feedback, internal reviewer feedback, or just like internal users. And then we will know that we had a problem and we need to like retroactively go and sort out how that happened and put in place corrections. So it's you know, it can come through many different channels. But when we call really quality, and what makes us like continue to work with someone is it's literally about like level of service. So we do regular assessments on a number of like categories that include quality, like linguistic quality, but also communication, on-time delivery, responsiveness. And I know that those are like more, you know, soft values, but it's actually what define for us what we can call a good partnership or not. So language, we have the belief that we can always improve upon, but the other things, if they're not there, so I'm actually trying to describe, we actually weight those things. So we don't even weight quality on the same level as we weight response time. For us, response time, knowing that someone is like working on something and that progress is being made, is more important than getting a delivery that has no issues. So it's a weighted system of quality and other relationship attributes.
Thank you. Sorry, I remember that you mentioned that you have dashboards, or better, you want your providers to provide you with dashboards, right? To measure this kind of things.
Yeah, it's always helpful if you can get an overview of quality measurements. So just like Jose, we measure quality. We have review processes, so we have a lot of QA processes. We've shifted a lot more to allowing our users to give feedback. So I'm currently running a program where we actually have users give direct feedback on our web assets and talk about language quality. As you can imagine, a lot of the users, even if you ask them about translation quality, they will talk about the product that we're offering. They will talk about very different things, their attitude towards Microsoft, be it positive or in some cases negative. So it's, we always have to filter out a lot of noise. By now we have pretty good customer signals. One of the things that I would like to highlight, because it's not different between Coupa and Microsoft, I would assume that often we talk about quality when we get those individual pieces of feedback that just bubble up from somebody, be it in-house. If we have a native speaker who happens to be the VP of another organization, we suddenly get a very different urgency in terms of quality. So what I often see what I've seen in my career happen, not too often, but once in a while, we would have a quality issue. Not that it's really a pervasive issue, but somebody has highlighted just a few strings. The funny thing is that still with all the improvements in machine translation, people would still say this looks like it has been machine translated as the insult for a bad translation. And then we will get back to our vendor and raise that with them. And very often the answer is everything is good. And that is not what normally the people who have escalated something want to hear. So that's when I feel it's really important to have that visibility. That's when I raised the issue of dashboards. If we can really go back and say, well, this is how the quality looks overall. This is really an outlier. That is so helpful for any localization team in any organization, I would say. If you really have a good grip on what you feel is kind of the baseline, and then when these outliers come in, when somebody gives that isolated feedback, that you can really say, yeah, looks bad. We will fix that issue right away, but we don't have a pervasive quality issue.
Thank you. Thank you. I have another question related to quality in some way. Of course, I think it's difficult for you, maybe, Soren, but maybe it's easier for Coupa. Do you offer product training to allow your LSPs to, to increase their quality or to start off in the right way, let's say?
So can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm thinking if you want to localize the product in the right way, I think you need to really understand how the product works. So I was wondering if you offer product training as part of your quality, program. I mean, for the localizers, for the translators.
Yeah, I can take this one.
How it works.
Yeah, we have done that. We have so that was when I was actually running quality, language quality, the language quality strategy for my team at the time. That when we kicked off a bigger project, we would give like an overview. It was not really a full product training, and especially since products are often in development. It's completely new. When it's ongoing, we can just refer people to a lot of the documentation that is already out there, right? But for the first version, we actually have given product overviews so that people get a feel. So actually, we're using Zoom right now, but people might be familiar with Microsoft Teams. I actually did the first version of that. I did the localization of the first version for that, and I got our language experts in one virtual room at the time, and gave them an overview. This is what this product will be doing. We don't have all the features yet, but so that you get an impression.
Yeah. Jose, before you answer the question yourself, I have a question for the audience, which is for you. So mindful of the time, I would ask that question first. How do you ensure consistency among different type of content, given the translation are handled by different providers?
Well, I guess I'll take that one, right?
Yeah, it's for you.
For me only? Oh, sorry. I did not say that. Okay, so it's tooling. The only thing that we can do about that is having consistent tooling. So when I started, there was like the best that we had in place was like a glossary, which helped, right? People could like consult that, but still, it's like sending people instructions. You don't really even know if they're going to be using them or not. So the only way to get that terminology was to enforce it, make it part of the system. So for us, like a big transformation was actually moving people from using whatever systems they wanted to use to work in the one TMS that we put in place. And even if like, whenever you pick a TMS, it's never the perfect TMS. It's always going to have like tons of problems. But we knew that we needed to have something where we brought so many different types of content, but also like products. So Coupa has many different like products. It's a whole suite of like finance software, and some of them they also like come from acquisitions. So in many cases, we brought them together. Like through force, right? So the terminology is not consistent. How do we solve that? How can we like really bring that together? Process will help, but one TMS where like TMs are like very specific to the products that we're like working on, but then also reference the other ones with like a very complex scheme of penalties and a glossary that is always applied to every single segment that people have to work on. That has been the only way of really enforcing consistency. Then there is, of course, like a glossary that you have to grow. There is a style guide. There is like periodical like training that you might offer, reference materials. But yeah, it's short answer, tooling. You need to have control of a tool that everybody goes through. Otherwise, things fall through the cracks. It will still like fall through the cracks with the system in place, but it's the best effort that I've found you can really do.
Thank you. I think I'm being too optimistic about allowing 5 minutes for each topic. If there's no other question about quality, let's go ahead with the next one, which is scope. It's a very wide topic. I remember, Soren, I asked you a question about that. What did you mean by scope? It's not clear to me yet, but I mean, again, it's very general. How are you structured? You mentioned something already. I guess for Jose, do you work like in sort of like an independent agency inside the company? Do you have internal strategy, internal clients?
So
can you spend a few words on that?
Yeah, so independence, yes, and no. So the way that we formulated it at Coupa is we wanted to have like a centralized team that deals with everything related to localization, which was like very ambitious, and it's taken time to like put together and to get people to use this. But the formula that we use is that of like a center of excellence. So basically say, this is a team that is like highly prepared to deal with things that you've been doing before by yourself in the best way you could. But now there is a team that knows what they're doing. They have the means, the resources, and the skills to actually do it, and force everyone to go through us. So I can tell you the first year and a half, for instance, it was like all about like chasing work that people were doing, and just tell them, it's like, hey, we exist. You need to come through us. Oh, you don't want to, but you have to. We're doing that. Oh, we just acquired a company. How? Hey, people, it's great. There's like 700 people that you bring with you, right? So how do we do that? How are you like localizing? Okay, we're going to take over that process, and we're going to analyze it and review, see how it performs, and then decide, do we change our approach to match what that acquired organization was doing, or do we bring that practice into what we have? And that is like number of times. So in our case, the only way to exist is as a centralized team. So are we independent? We do basically work with everyone else to determine what needs to be done. So that maybe answers your question a little bit better. It's like, we're not just a service. We're like an internal strategic player for the organization. We're a partner to everybody else. So if someone wants to do something in terms of localization, we need to agree to that as an organization, as opposed to like just be a place where you send a request and you get it back. It's like, no, that I didn't want to like set that up as the way to work. I think that becomes like very painful for the people working on that. It's a lot more meaningful. So maybe that was my wishful thinking. A lot more meaningful when you are actually bringing enough value that you can help make decisions.
Thank you. Soren, what about you? What's your structure in a few words? I mean,
so I'm part of a big localization organization, but my immediate team is very embedded with the teams that we're partnering with, which are actually organizationally very, very far away from us. Yeah, but as Jose put it, we are a strategic partner, and we don't even consider ourselves a localization team. It's more, we consider ourselves more, we're the global market engagement team. So we're basically the international partner for a lot of teams. And yeah, we give input from the get-go. So we would be involved in a lot of discussions that are happening very early on.
Thank you. Well,
so what about you, Diego? What kind of like what kind of like organizations actually engage with you? Is it people who are just like, yeah, how do your customers look like?
oh, well, let's talk about the end buyers. We don't work with so many. The ones we work with, they have an internal structure, an internal department for localization. There are end buyers, so they work. As in your case, I would say, I don't know how strategic they are or they are considered at the company, but I'm sure that they have internal customers. They basically provide services to everyone in the company. And there are companies that are still in the journey of reaching that situation. But yeah, that would be the kind of typical for the customers that we have.
Mm-hmm. You see, I would say
or we work with a specific department, sorry.
No, sorry, I will step over you. I would say that that's something that we need to change, right? It's like you should know. There is no reason why the people that you're like working with would not share with you, so that you better understand what they are and how they operate, why they make the decisions that they make. So again, if we really after like partnership, it has to like flow both directions, right? The answer is like we don't know how they work. But yeah, we should change that.
Yeah, I should basically change that. Yeah, no, you're totally right.
No, they should change it. So you can ask for it, but it's on them to not stay and just like be a buyer of services, but want to be a partner, because through that understanding, I think that's how you accomplish better things. When there is like certain complicity. Maybe I'm not romantic about this, but I think that has to be like that complicity.
Well, I mean, that's the best relationship, absolutely. Yeah. When there is transparency on everything, on both sides, absolutely. Well, they would expect us to tell them how we are structured, so there's no reason why I shouldn't ask them.
Yeah, and it's not only about the team structure, right? So our vendor currently, they will even give feedback to for certain activities that we are planning from a more doability perspective. So they are also doing quite a bit of technical work, as you can imagine, on a website, and they would give us really early input on what is doable within our tool set. So I'm wondering how often that is possible for localization vendors to be involved in some of these earlier stages.
Doesn't happen too often, I would say. Not in my case, at least. Maybe not that lucky, but doesn't have too often to be involved.
Yeah, and that would be a question for the audience as well, right? How many people in the audience would be curious to hear whether they're just being brought in when the project is all packaged up and ready to go from a localization perspective, or whether they hear about it earlier and get first glimpses and have a chance to possibly even give feedback.
Anyone willing to share his experience or her experience on that? There's someone adding comments in the chat. Oh yeah.
I wonder if people even like want to do that. So always my assumption when we like ask more of a partner is because we have like clarified these expectations at the beginning of the relationship. Is we expect you to like work closely with us. I expect you to like consult with us. I expect you to like tell us when you think we're doing something wrong. Help us like learn from what you've been doing with other customers. But we also found people who did not necessarily want to. So some people at some point, we brought them into the fold and we are kind of like forcing them. Like in my experience, like some providers, some vendors, they just don't want that. They either don't have the skills or they don't want to have the time. They don't want to invest. And then that relationship ends up like not going too well or withering very quickly.
Yeah, Marie in the chat is making the good point that it really depends on the client and the size of the project, right? There are clients who don't invite it. And yes, for really dependent on the size of the project, I would think that how much you want to be involved further upstream.
Yeah, Anna comments, it's always so nice to be involved in the early stages of the project. And it happens, she says, with larger clients and projects. Yeah, that's true, probably.
But so one question for the audience on that one. If we invite you over to like the early stages of the project, do we need to pay you for that time? It's really, I'm not trying to be funny. It's a legit one, because oftentimes I want to be like very protective of like people's time. At the same time, when we're really having like a partnership situation, we often put that aside and we both volunteer time that we spend on each other. But sometimes I've come across people who were just like noting down every single hour, every single phone conversation.
Like the lawyer,
and sending us a bill. It's like, oh, well, we spoke like this long. It's like, we were sorting out something together. Why do I need to pay? I also spend that time. Why do I need to pay for that? And it's tricky. Yeah, it sounds like Marie really wants the microphone. Right, Marie?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. I opened my microphone. I didn't mean to put her on the spot, of course, but
I did.
But you are.
Oh, thank you.
I did it. No regrets.
Okay. Marie, would you like to talk directly?
Hi, can you hear me?
We do.
Very well.
Okay, I'm sorry because I'm at the airport. That's why I didn't I didn't interfere before, because I'm at it's a little busy around me.
No
But
worries.
it's been a very interesting session so far. I think partnerships are super important from our perspective. But as I mentioned, not everybody is ready for this. We have some clients where it's a one person kind of a marketing director or engineering director, and they're kind of at the bottom of the localization process, if you want. And so sometimes they want to listen to us and do things, but they cannot, because I think that their companies are just not ready for it. On the other hand, we've had some really great experiences with clients where it's a small localization team, but they know what they're doing. They know what they want to do. And it's a real partnership, kind of to your point, Jose, where we're stepping up at the beginning of the project, and we have a lot of time and hours planning a project and helping them. And as I was saying, I think that I may be a very, very bad salesperson, but I think that's part of helping out a client, because in the end, you'll get more work, more project. You will develop a relationship, sometimes even a friendship with a client. And to me, that's much more valuable than charging a few $100 here and there for a phone call. So that's my opinion. I'm sure a lot of people might disagree. But I see it as a much larger return on investment, because you're looking at partnership with a client that might lapse for years. And most of our clients, we've been working with them for many years, and I think that's one of the things they enjoy. Is if we need to get on a call every week or every 2 weeks and tell them, hey, we think that's a great idea, or maybe we could try this. That's one of the things they like about working with us. So again, everybody has different ways. Every client is different. But it's very interesting to hear what you have to say and what you've been sharing with us. So that's that.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you for letting us put you on the spot.
No problem. I'm happy to do so.
Okay, I also opened Anna's microphone.
Anna, welcome.
Can you hear me?
Can hear you. We can see you. Yeah.
Oh, sure. So I immediately, when Jose said that, would you want to be involved? One of the larger projects that we do right now involves rare Russian languages. And I absolutely love working with that company. They are in close contact with the end client, and we are preparing right now for a project in January. We were preparing for a project in October, back in June. So we had plenty of time to consult them, because it's rare languages. We had plenty of time to consult them, like what dialect should you do, what this and what that. And we were able to contribute. And when you are able to contribute, I think that builds the relationship and brings it to a whole new level. And it's not only beneficial for us, but I guess for the company, because what they were doing initially was wrong, basically. So I think that, of course, it depends on the type of the involvement, but I guess if you are willing to let the localization providers into your processes, I think that Diego is shaking his head. So I guess we all will be willing to contribute basically to your needs.
And I think that it's important to say that everybody involved in something like that and in consultation and getting better, everybody should be like fairly compensated for that. What I mean is like sometimes I might be working with someone who is an account manager, a program manager, a project manager on the vendor side, and those guys are being like paid full time. So their time needs to go somewhere, and we also like pay like management fees and things like that. If they require the help of other people who are like paid hourly, such as like translators, for instance, language leads, reviewers, you name it, then those people should not do that work for free, because the people that we're like working with that get on the phone with us, they're not working for free. They're just like deciding to spend their time on that, but they're like paid in full for their full week of work. So if someone else needs to be brought into the fold, because I've seen this, like some people, some translators being asked to join something with like no compensation, for instance, it's like, that should not happen. You should like really get into those terms. And what we do, for instance, is like I probe into those things. When someone brings people into the conversation, I ask, are these people like being compensated for this? Because we're gonna appreciate their time in a different way. We might have to like, you know, if we only have them for 2 hours and we're paying out of our pocket, it's different than if someone else is like not paying, or they're paying for part of it. So I think that having that transparency and making sure that everybody's like properly compensated, it also changes how you can evolve that into relationship to partnership.
Yeah, but as you said, there's a part that is considered an investment as well on our side, on the vendor side, right? We invest our time in building the relationship, in understanding the client better, and that can come out of our pockets as well. Feel less give a limit, I would say.
Yeah, and if it's taking a toll, just like tell your customer. If it's like being too much, if you're like definitely if you're feeling like they're taking advantage of you, that's one thing, right? But if they're if it's just too much and they're not aware, just like bring it up as a concern.
Yeah, we'll be talking about money, so I changed the slide.
Make it rain.
And hopefully there will be more questions from the audience about the pricing and the money and, you know, the dollars. My question would be, how important is price in your selection process? How is it ranked?
I thought too much. Sorry, that's for you.
Yeah, I have not been. I've not been directly. We have a business team, and we actually have a centralized vendor management team. And they will negotiate rates. And then on the actual contract level, I've not been involved with that. I do think it does play a role, but it's definitely not the most deciding factor. I would put it further down on the list. From all the RFPs that I've seen, people talk about it. Obviously, since we have a business management team, there's business in the in that name. But we also need to make sure that our business can be run properly, and so questions like what we discussed about quality, even like the way that we're collaborating with a team, might take precedence.
Okay, sure. And you, Jose?
So I would say that we're not cheap. We're not cheap when it comes to money. So we know, the whole team understands that, you know, people need to be like fairly compensated. So we do pay good rates. We pay like MLV and above rates to the people that we work with. Sometimes we pay the same rates to a big MLV than to a smaller shop, and then we get a lot of like really great service from the smaller shop, who is obviously making a higher margin. So and then we keep the rates the same, because it also like makes it a lot more predictable for us. So we can like move from one vendor to another. So what I did at the beginning at Coupa, for instance, I established like a higher ceiling of paying high, not in some cases pretty high rates for some languages, like I don't know, Japanese or Nordics, and be fine paying that, but then demand great service out of it. So what we try to do is like work with the vendors to also understand if the people that are working with them are fairly compensated, making sure that basically they're not like keeping the money. And that's something that it's a deal breaker for us. If in some cases we found that the people that were working, 2 steps from us, like being subcontracted by our vendors, they were not making a decent rate, then we even decided to not work with them. We don't want that kind of like ethic. At the same time, I don't think that that's the norm. I don't think that every other organization, I think that that's what we should strive for. And I think that there is a role in the buyer side to try and have more visibility into that. So the vendor will tell you, no, that's not your business. But it is. I need to understand my supply chain the same way that I will not buy a product that is like produced through child labor somewhere. Yeah. It's exactly the same thing. And if you try to say otherwise, you don't understand how this works. So at Coupa, we do a lot of like supply chains software. So it's surprising. And we have like got like really comfortable, for instance, like yes, asking for that is like, how much are people like compensated? How much do you keep in terms of like margins? And you don't want to share that kind of information, then I don't want to work with you. I don't need you to tell me specifics. I don't need you to reveal your business secrets, and I will protect anything you share with me. But at the same time, you don't want to be in this open relationship where I know how much money you make out of our work and how the people that do the work are like making, then I don't want to be in bed with you.
That's very nice, as Maria was commenting. Sharing my point of view on price, I would also say that for our side, and maybe I'm being unpopular here, price is not really the main thing that we look at when we talk about customers. I mean, we are all looking at an ongoing relationship and a transparent relationship as well, at growing together. I know, Jose, you are all into scalability and growing together. That's the same for us. And what I look at for my company is a customer that is going to stay with me for long, rather than pay me like high rates and work on a single project, of course. There's something in the chat. Let me check. The vendors are always the ones that are forgotten, and it's also part of the partnership for LSP. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I have to say that especially for a big company like Microsoft, it can get easy for somebody working in localization to not get visibility of the supply chain at all. I've always preferred to actually once in a while hear from the individual translator, but we also have those LSPs that really try to completely shield us from the supply chain. And yeah, I'm impressed, Jose, that you have that visibility, because that's probably also not always easy, right? There's probably, especially those companies that don't pay their vendors well, they probably don't want you to find out.
Yeah. Maybe someone don't pay them at all.
and that's why I think that the process with like choosing a vendor, you really need to spend a good amount of time in there to really know who you're getting into business, because reality is we don't want to like switch vendors. It's a pain. It's bad. So better to put like the work at the beginning and really in many cases ask even like reputation, ask for references, talk to other people, try to connect. At one point I asked to like interview some of like the lead people that were going to be like translators working on some of our languages, because I wanted to have like a private interview with those guys without the vendor being in the room. And it's like, okay, they didn't like that, but then in some cases the outcome was fantastic. Someone tells you, no, this is a great place to work, or this is a great company to work with. Oh, well, then you tick that box. And I think that the RFPs process and the selection process, it needs to be taking that into consideration. So when you're like doing selecting a vendor, it cannot just be the traditional RFP, which, you know, corporations, we do, right? There's all these boxes to tick. You need to add some in there. And I'm lucky that at Coupa, it's an important thing to make sure that it's like fair trade, so to say. And then as an organization, we support that, and we can spend the time. But yeah, it's definitely worth the investment. And it's a way to like course correct this industry in a way. So there's a lot of people who might be like listening to this, or that we've talked to, that we know, they're like extremely unhappy about like the prices. And then there's a lot of buyers like ourselves that probably, if we just start talking about like the prices of how much we pay per work, people are going to be like, no way, you're paying that much. It's like, yeah, that's true. You need to understand that supply chain and where the money stays. but then you need to be more transparent. You need to talk about it. We need to understand it. All of us.
Do you also check reputation, like on pros, group board or something like that?
No, I would do more things like see what their online presence looks like, what their messaging looks like, and then try to contact some of the customers that they have like worked with or that they're working with. If they advertise that they're working with a customer, that's an easy one. Try to like connect with someone. And again, the industry is not so big. So reaching out through LinkedIn and asking about a vendor is something that actually people appreciate in many cases. And it's something that the vendors cannot really control. They cannot like keep you from talking to another buyer and just learn, hey, how is it working for you? Again, you don't need that many vendors. So you do the work once and hopefully that lasts for years. Yeah, but who cares about pros? You don't expect any buyer to look at pros. That's someone who's trying to figure out translation and have no clue. But if it's
in pros you will find information about a vendor who's not paying his vendor, for instance.
Yeah, but if you're like educated at that level as a buyer, then you probably have like other mechanisms. If you end up on pros, it's because you didn't know where to find that information. You're completely clueless.
Yeah, like Anna just added something in the chat about reputation. It can look very different with their clients than it looks with their supply chain, right? And I feel it's super helpful if we on the client side can hear about that. And that's why I've always tried to reach out, to translators, linguistic reviewers, to just once in a while have those one-on-one conversations. We cut out the middleman and just learn a little bit about how is that vendor in the middle, how are they doing in both directions.
Yeah, I know for sure that my customers, they checked on us before starting work with us. So reputation was a big part of the selection process.
Yeah. So
I would strongly support that. The time is running out so quickly that I'm not sure we can do everything, but it's okay. Let's scratch our agenda. It's okay. I have 2 questions here prepared. This is about tools and processes. I remember, sorry, you mentioned that you want your vendors to have tools and processes in place and that you want them to be transparent about them. So this is why I have this slide here. I was wondering, talking about vendors, of course, do you have any clear process in place for training them, for onboarding them as well? And this is interesting for me as well with my freelancers.
You mean for training people on the tools?
Like onboarding and training, yeah. Like when you first select a new vendor, let's say, maybe it's more for Jose, I don't know. If you have any processes in place for onboarding them, like what do you do with new vendors? Let's put it this way.
In our case, we have a problem is that not even the people that we hire for any position, we always assume that unless you're coming from sales, you don't know what our industry is about. It's business spend management, which we all do, but people don't even know that it's an industry in itself. Basically, how people manage money at their company, how they spend it, how they invoice it, how they purchase goods, supply chain, all of it. So it's very hard to find translators who are actually qualified. So our effort goes into making sure that, not just say, oh, this person is like a technical translator. No, we need to find people who have a background on finance. And that's the tricky one. And we won't take just someone who has like done software and is somehow familiar. No, you need to have some sort of like background on finance, whether it is you have like a degree related to finance, or you've worked in finance, or you've been translating finance for a long time. But then we assume that everybody that starts working with us know nothing. They know nothing about what we do, and they will learn on the job. So there is the only training that we can do is like we can share like access to our documentation, for instance, which is like very, very wide, but we know that it's going to just take time. So background, you need to come with the finance knowledge, and then you'll learn on the job. So that's why getting a new vendor is tricky for us. And when someone comes and say, no, we have like the best translators, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
We hire someone in marketing and they know nothing about what we're doing. They need to learn on the job before they can deliver. So same thing with linguists.
Well, when it comes to the tools themselves, I mean, that's where, and in a way, it's interesting, kind of the evolution at Microsoft, because we used to have a lot of our own generic tools. We had our own software localization tool, so we needed to train people very consistently. As we move more to a landscape where we often where we give our LSPs the opportunity to basically just give their vendors the freedom to use whatever tool and just bring back files in the right format. We are less involved in tools training, but then we don't really know how well actually everybody is trained. And that is where I sometimes really like having those conversations with the supply chain, because I've seen that people, good translators might not be the best in using a CAT tool, right? And it's sometimes been eye-opening to see, well, and then they might need to use 3 different CAT tools for different clients or different LSPs. And yes, they might just stumble over things that I wouldn't have expected. So it's kind of hard to say who should be training them, right? Who's the right the right organization to be on point for that. We've traditionally often had that approach of training the trainers, so bring in a few people and then have them disseminate the knowledge. But yeah, I see us doing that less as we're moving more to industry standards. And I feel there's a little bit of a gap there that we probably as a whole industry, I sometimes think like we just expect translators to be savvy with all those tools that we throw at them. And
there are so many.
Much, yeah, exactly.
We've actually recently like put our teams through a new TMS, and it's a TMS that's like relatively young and it's not so well known. Quite honestly, you cannot expect them to really know how to work with it, and there's a lot of like issues. So it's again partnership with like the provider of that system to give you like training materials and be there and have like quick support. But then it's also a lot of like, let's all like be clear, this is going to be painful for months. And then it will be smoothed out. I tell you, I won't change the system in 6 months or a year. So it will be worth the investment. Hopefully you can leverage this for other people, but yeah, let's all suck it up and push forward.
Thanks. Let's move on. The next one is relationship, which is the main topic of the presentation. Okay. You said something before, Jose. Well, both of you would love to talk with people, with translators. Do you expect the vendors to be transparent? And even sometimes I'm asked to send the CVs of my translators to my clients because they want to check on them. Do you expect that from your vendors, or do you trust them in a way?
I do trust our vendors, but I also want to have more information. So actually one vendor that I worked with, and we asked for that, but they gave us a little bit demographic statistics, like how old are the translators, kind of what's their education level, male female split. It was really interesting just to see kind of the age group that was at the time when I was working on the Skype team. When you have certain products that are geared to a certain group, it's not necessary that all the translators are in that same age group as the audience, but just getting some of that information. Yeah, I'm always impressed how high actually the education level of the average translator is that we're working with. So I felt that helpful when you just said like even having the CVs. I felt like that should be basically the minimum to get a little bit of kind of the basic facts. But yeah, having those additional conversations is so super valuable because, as I said, working for a bigger company, you get more and more removed from the people who are doing the actual work. And they probably sometimes have the feeling as well. Like our translators know probably that they're working for Microsoft, but they don't have that relationship. And yeah, I always like ideas. We had that, for example, that translators could send in what they felt like was their best translation during a month, and we would highlight those. And yeah, I feel like it goes in both directions, right? Both sides should build those relationships. Ultimately, we're all humans in the industry, and we want to see our work valued on the one side, and on the other hand, we also want to know that people actually put some. I mean, I know that translators are putting passion in their work, but if I can really see kind of who are these people behind all the strings that are going through our pipelines. Sometimes it feels like it's this big machinery, but when you look at the outcome, you know that there's a lot of passion behind it, and yeah, getting that it's just helpful.
Jose,
So
I think you would expect this transparency. We answered already.
I don't demand it. I don't think that we're in a position yet where we should demand it. I work with organizations in the past. I remember, like, and this is they have shared this, so this is not a secret. So I remember like working with Facebook, where like they needed to know everybody who was like working in their UI. You know, they wanted to have them on a Facebook group so that they could see how they were and have them like interact with their teams directly and things like that. So, and I gotta say, I like that approach. I'm all for transparency, and there is a lot of like, I think that there's a lot of disadvantage to not having that transparency. I think that the teams, those people who are working with you, by being anonymous and therefore like more replaceable, there is a little bit of more of a disconnect. So yes, the vendor that you're working with can replace them anytime, but when they know that you know about them, I think that you care a little bit more. When there is that, even if there's like a middleman in there, it's a closer relationship. When we can like bring them into a meeting and just review issues and know that they will be there, and then the next time we do it again and it's the same people showing up, I gotta tell you, that feels like really well for myself and our team, because that's something that does happen. And I think that that is like the main trend. Bringing people into training and bringing people into calls, bringing people into reviews is usually the mechanism through which we get to know who is working on our accounts. Because a vendor cannot really tell you, no, I cannot, I'm not going to bring the linguist that did this. They have to like go and get those people. So it gets a lot more personable and it gets a lot more accountable. You really know who did it. They feel better about it because they're like closer to the end customer. You can like share feedback directly, which in some cases we even like connect them with people in a region and say, hey, I don't have to talk to this person, but they need to meet with this marketing lead in France, and actually they need to have a conversation. I think that in my experience, those relationships have been a lot more productive and at a human level, much nicer to have than just working in a business where you think that you're just like one name, completely anonymous, can be replaced tomorrow.
Absolutely, it's amazing. We are 2 minutes to the end. I mean, it's crazy. I could stay here for hours, but I don't want Isabella to knock on my door and kick us out. So I would like to spend the last couple of minutes for the Ask Us Anything session. So any closing question from the audience? And I'm sorry, but I know that I have to close this on time.
Maybe in the meantime, you want to launch the polls, the last two polls?
I would
while
love
people
to come
think
on
about
with,
the questions.
I would really love to come on with a word cloud, basically.
Yes.
So can you see the poll page?
No, not
Hopefully.
yet. No.
Not yet?
No.
Okay, so maybe now, if I click share, it's better.
Yes.
Okay.
So that would be, so this is a workout. So can you think of, well, we have no bias, so I think we should skip this one. But I would like to come on then with a work cloud with the idea client. So we have some LSPs in the audience. Can you, and it's launched, so can you type one word to describe how your idea client would look like? Is it coming? Oh, generous.
Like that, generous.
Fair. Okay. Available.
That is a yes.
Also nice.
That is a good one.
Also very nice.
Flexible.
Flexible.
Yep. I think that's
We all need to be flexible, I think.
yeah.
Pragmatic.
Yeah. I worry about fair. Fair is usually like a tricky adjective to use because it's completely subjective.
So who said fair? Inclusive.
Rodrigue said fair, actually, I think. Not sure. Let's see.
Oh, you see that as well.
No, I don't.
It was
think so.
anonymous.
Okay. Rodrigue, I opened your microphone in case you wanted to talk.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Oh, hi, Rodrigue.
Sure.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I typed in the word fair. It's just to be open-minded and to have a fair price. And once you calculate the price, it's to do with margins and living your life and having a vendor to live his life or her life. That's being fair. So if you open on that, I expect everyone to understand that people have to live. That's the word fair to me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Isa, we're late already, guess.
It's okay, don't worry. I can stay a couple of minutes longer, don't worry. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all. It was very interesting, and I think we should have this kind of discussions more often, to be honest. Diego, thank you so much for taking the lead and organizing the follow-up, and of course, Soren for being the first one to discuss the topic. And Jose, thank you so much for joining us here at Gala. And to everybody
Pleasure.
To everybody who attended, thank you. And this is the last webinar actually of 2021. Before I close it, don't log off. You'll see a post-webinar survey on the screen, and take 10 seconds to give us some feedback and let us know what topics you find interesting, so that we can refine our webinar offering. We'll take a little break over the Christmas period, but we'll be back on January 20th with a webinar with a rather enticing title. It's The Great Empty Reckoning 2022. It sounds like the Matrix, but maybe it's going to be very, very interesting. So please join us then. In the meantime, have a good day or a good evening, depending on where you are. Have a happy holiday, stay safe and be well. And we'll see you all in 2022. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Isa.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Thanks,
Diego.
Soren.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Thanks,
bye.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye-bye.